say. And welcome to the show. We'd like to hear everything that's gone on. I think you have a lot of information to share with the people. And I can't speak for everybody in Las Vegas or the country for that matter, but I'm very interested in this situation, I'll tell you that. And it kind of really interests me. So who wants to start? Leanne, you want to take it off?
Thank you so much, Clark, for having us.
Sure.
Really appreciate this. Thank you for helping us to have a voice, which is so important to the American people, that they have a voice, which is our constitutional right. Right, everybody?
Amen.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Here, here. At any rate, my name is Leanne, and I am from Orange County, California. And I was here this past Thursday, a week ago today, and I was introduced to the situation through Pastor Wiley Drake, whom we'll be sharing shortly. But I am just absolutely devastated what has been going on with the Bundy case and with Cliven, and how his constitutional rights and the rights to his land have been stolen from him. And today I was in court, the federal court here in downtown Las Vegas, and I was absolutely devastated and appalled and shocked that this wonderful family, godly man was not only handcuffed, he was in chains. I couldn't see them, but I could sure hear them in the court. And to think that his constitutional rights are being stripped from him.
Absolutely.
And
Like perf walking. Where's he going to go?
Yeah.
How many bailiffs were
I
in
know.
there?
Oh,
Yeah.
they had a place
They're partying
covered.
in there for a parade.
Yeah, I
So
love it.
I want everybody to know that I have my own personal stake, which I'll just state simply, but it also involves the land. You know, this is the home of the free, the land of the brave, right? In these United States of America. The land that our forefathers shed their blood and died for so that we could have freedom.
Amen.
Freedom, many freedoms. But one of those that applies to my own personal situation as a single mom of many years is in Orange County, California, where I call them the banksters, meaning gangsters, wicked banks, wicked and deplorable,
Well,
wicked
Leanne,
banksters.
let me interrupt you there for a minute, because a number of years ago, I began to hear a little bit about those banksters and gangsters. And it was about 4 years ago that I had the opportunity with another pastor friend of mine to go through Nevada and go out to Bunkerville and meet with Cliven Bundy. And he was sharing about what it was like to be a rancher and what it was like, all the struggles, the hard work, and the dedication that was necessary. And he began to share with me what grew into a horror story. Here was a man who had a large ranch, but wasn't a rich man by any means, had a large family, and that's where his riches were, and his sons and daughters and so forth. But talking about all the hard work, and that the government had stepped in and told him what grass he could feed to his cows and what water he could use. And that wasn't bad enough, but then they came along and got all the other ranchers to sign a contract for this grass and water and use of the land. And when you sign a contract, that makes that land then belong to the government. And so I became upset about that and found out what was going on and heard a little bit about it. Then I went back to Southern California. I'm not a rancher, I'm a pastor. But I also work out of Washington, D.C. as the Congressional Prayer Conference chairman. And so then after a short while, I heard what was going on in Bunkerville. And so we had the privilege to go out there and to stand with Cliven Bundy against the BLM. Now the BLM were trying to take over his property. They came in there with long guns and handguns, and it was pointed out to me by a friend of mine that's an attorney that the BLM is an agency, not a police department. They're not even allowed to carry guns. But many of us who had legal permits to carry a gun, legal permits to be a pistol-packing preacher, in my case, in the state of Nevada, we went there and stood with Cliven Bundy.
May I point out
Sure.
a mild discrepancy there? We actually have a lawful duty to guard, protect, and defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That's right.
Legal is the removal of God from law.
Yes.
From God's law and replacing it with man's policies, procedures, and statutes instead of God's law. And this is why we find ourselves in this conundrum of being taken over by this federal bureaucracy of these private, foreign-owned, for-private profits agencies.
Yes. Well, you're absolutely right. And so we went there back in April of 2014 and stood together with Cliven Bundy and many other ranchers. One other rancher that was there that I befriended at that time was a man who came out because I wear my uniform. I wear a suit, a business suit. And I was there on the ranch with a business suit on, sort of out of place. And a fellow by the name of Lavoy Finicum came over and said, "What in the world are you doing here in a suit?" And so we became friends very quickly because I explained it to him. And we talked together and prayed together. And of course, the rest of that story is later, several years later, Lavoy Finicum was trying to fight this same government takeover by going and standing and meeting with the now FBI that came in loaded for killing, and began then to talk with them and discuss with them. And on their third trip out of town to visit with the sheriff, the rest, of course, is history. The FBI's mercenary special shooters shot into the vehicle that had an 18-year-old kid in it and had a lady in it and some men. And Lavoy Finicum got out of the vehicle and said, "Please don't shoot anymore in the vehicle. If you got to shoot somebody, shoot me."
And they did.
And they did. And they shot and killed him. And
Amazing.
so we are in a murder.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, that's right. You see, killing is not wrong. I killed back in 1963 and 64 to keep my oath as a member of the United States military to protect our country, United States of America, against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And we were in Indochina, they called it then, Vietnam later. But anyway, we fought for that right. But what they did there on the road is ambush and murder those people.
Did I hear you say they were on the way to see the sheriff?
They were on the way,
in Grant County, Sheriff Palmer.
as a matter of fact, not only on the way to see the sheriff, but when they were stopped on the road, the recording is available, by the way, on my webpage, as well as on Facebook and everywhere else. But you can hear Lavoy say, "Please let us pass. We're going to meet with the sheriff." And you can hear that on the tape.
An important point to this scenario is that the so-called sheriff of Harney County, Ward, was appointed by this imposter actor masquerading as a judge, Grassley, the so-called self-deemed dictator of the whole county, who is also on the Board of Commissioners,
He's the head mason.
he's got about 5 or 6 different
Head of Vital
jobs.
Statistics.
Yeah.
He owns the county. He's actually one of the owners of Harney County, the D&B rated county.
And who are you? Oh, in the mic.
Thank you. My name's Renee Powers. I know these fine people also because I've known the Bundys since Bunkerville. Shelley Johnson and I do a lot of journalistic work together. And I also have One Mom on a Burro radio show. Have covered these stories, have covered other stories. Right now, I'm working on The Cowboy and the Lady, where my partner Tom Davis is out of Harney County area, and we cover the ranchers, and we're going out and we're bringing the stories in. The key component to this whole thing that really drives this home to being completed and not needing any further discussion as far as Harney County goes is Sheriff Ward knew they were going out there that day to the refuge. He knew. calls were made to the Narrows to tell them not to worry, but a convoy was on the way. The manager of the Malheur Refuge had all the employees 4 days before take vacation. The day before this visit by the Constitutional Posse, he went and gathered all of his goodies and his paperwork and made sure, and he was told to go on vacation. So we have a point here where we have gates open, doors open, keys left, and the sheriff department telling and making calls to say, don't worry. Of course, if they were to call, there'd be a 911 call, right? So there was an open door here. There was nothing here that was trespass, and I think that's very key. The other key thing is Mr. Bundy, the day of the standoff with the cattle, he was on a bulldozer. He was not down there under the bridge. There's a little story leading up to this, but suffice it to say that Mr. Bundy got down on his knees and prayed, and he asked the Lord to guide him if this was the right choice to take this bulldozer and take that gate down. Tractor wouldn't start. The bulldozer wouldn't start. There was his answer. He looked up at Buddha and said, there's our answer. The phone rings right at that opportune time. The cattle had been released. So for anyone to say that Mr. Bundy was there to commit a crime, he was there to save his family. He was there to save his property, his cattle that had been murdered by the BLM. They're terrible stewards of the land. They do not take care of the land. They're terrible stewards. And what's sad is these men and women working for this agency, many of them did not know that it wasn't a government agency. So when we sit there and continually hear government, this is a foreign corporation owned out of Puerto Rico. It's a sub-corporation of the U.S. Incorporated. So this is a foreign for-profit corporation. Research that we have found on the backside of this, and you can go to the Cowboy and the Lady, we've got all the writings there. On the backside is, our belief is that the BLM is the money laundering hand of the U.S. government attached to the Freemasons, laundering the dirty money through the probate courts, and hence why Judge Grasty is also a probate judge. So there's a lot more going on here, that the courts are making it seem like the drama for our men to be held because they've done something wrong, when in reality, they're covering what they've done wrong.
Renee, to your point about the providing of the keys, leaving the buildings open, and in fact, inviting the visitors or Public Works reparations group that went to the refuge to clean up the facility and fix some of the bad faith lack of care to Indian artifacts in the facility itself. Isn't that more like inviting the spider into the web to set a trap?
Of course it is.
To create the pretense that they had occupied, and they even further alleged that they militantly took over when nobody used any guns. If the buildings were open, they walked in, they were effectually invited by government agents who had the authority to do so, and then they reframed the argument in a false narrative to fabricate the pretense that they were criminals, they were terrorists, they were militants, when they were really very, very peaceful. No one presented any arms that pointed against anyone. There was no violence by the group of so-called occupiers. In fact, they found government agents of the FBI or other actors supposedly employed by the federal government masquerading as militia to frame the blame on the militia.
That was Chris Briles that caught
Chris Briles, the former
fire
police
marshal.
chief of 24 years,
Fire marshal.
fire marshal, excuse me, I misspoke, actually resigned his job because of Judge Grassley's insistence that he not do his duty to report a crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 4.
Well, and on top of that, he also has just this week lost his place with the search and rescue after almost 3 decades of service to the county. The real key here is it starts back in Bunkerville. As Wiley and I have talked about, these men and women are whistleblowers. That's really what they are, and we've taken this.
Absolutely.
They're whistleblowers.
And we need, when I say we, me and all of you listening,
Americans.
all Americans need to start talking about these men and these women. I've known them for years. Other people have known them. They're godly, grandmas, grandpas, husbands, wives, children. They're good, godly people. They're not outlaws. But the law has come in and said, you're an outlaw because this is how you've got to obey the law. The outlaw situation up in Oregon, for example. Here was a rancher and his son, the Hammonds, trying to get along with the law, to work with the government, and they were doing what's called a prescribed burn. That's the time when you go out on a farm or ranch and you set fire to the lower grass and burn up the insects so they don't eat up your trees and control the fire there in the ranch. And they had a permit, a legal permit from the government to do that, but they had to be a part of the workers. And they were, and the fire got out of control.
But it actually only did, in reality, about $100 worth of damage.
Yeah.
Because most of the land was theirs. So what they actually, when they said they did $1,000 worth of damage, you have to say a certain amount to cause it to be the degree of a problem.
Right.
Of a domestic
Oh, so they
terrorist
just.
act. So we tack on a little, just like Mr. Bundy, back to the Bundys. They still to this day have not produced a bill for $1 million to him. They've never received a bill for grazing fees. So people who hear that they owe grazing fees of $1 million, not only are they off base, but again, we're hearing propaganda that's being created as a narrative of someone who wants to control. When you go back to Bunkerville, and we know that they kept the cattle, they had a lot of babies dead, they had a lot of mamas missing. People still came together to help the Bundy family. But what we also know is within a short time after the Bunkerville event, a woman by the name of Catherine Armstrong was hired by the FBI to go into training, into surveillance and intelligence training. And she was a prosecutor in Pennsylvania. So she never had an actual law enforcement background, which the FBI, if you go to their website, is very big on the fact that they only hire the best. Well, we do know that they also hire the worst or the least experienced when they need to use them to create a narrative. And so she was in training for a year and a half. She was one of the first agents that we know of that was in Harney County with a big BLM t-shirt. Tom and I call it her love affair with John Ritzheimer in her head, because everything in her narrative, in her writings, has to do with John Ritzheimer. And how belligerent he was, and how he attacked her, and how black trucks with blackened windows were following her. Well, now we know, because of Chris Briles, that a lot of the accusations actually were coming from FBI agents impersonating, just like this woman had a BLM t-shirt on, impersonating someone she was not. So what we know is that this is not a simple fix. That what this is a simple fix. Meaning, fix the game.
Yeah.
Because they want to survive. The federal government is not a government. You cannot be a government and DNB rated business at the same time. So what we have is a corporation that's taken over, and the American patriots are pro-government. As pro-government as you're going to get. And what we are saying is if America wants to survive, we have to stop the foreign takeover. We have to stop the corporate greed, and we have to recognize that when the corporate greed creates a need to murder people in cold blood, somebody better step up to the table.
Yeah.
Because here we are, speaking of stepping up to the table, you've got a very small group of people here. But guess what? This social media event that was created through the CIA and everything called Facebook was the Trojan horse that was supposed to entrap all of us. Okay, they've got all of our names, they know who we are, but guess what? What they forgot was that we also have beating hearts, we have children, we have grandmothers, we have grandfathers who were in the Revolutionary War, we have history behind us. We also know that now many of us are coming together, really have history behind us. We're finding out we've been related. Our families have come together and fought in these wars.
Yes.
So what's happened is this Trojan horse is actually backfiring. And when you have all these years that the same pattern by the FBI of using, like in Dr. Red, he's dead because of what happened in Utah with the artifacts. It's the same story over and over. There's artifacts that are being messed up, the Indians get mad, somebody gets arrested for stealing artifacts, but what they always forget to say is, oh yeah, we had an informant. like in Utah for 2 years, who was a homeless man that got paid $250,000 to do that. And the little bead Mr. Red died over was a 1/16 of an inch, approximately. $75 bead that, what did they say was valued at? $1,000. So we have a lot of pattern leading up to today. And what we know about Catherine Armstrong is she wrote this narrative. And anybody can go see it. It's a PDF online. And this narrative is about what could have happened. This is a proposed arrest warrant. So when Lavoie was murdered, there was no arrest warrant. But the agents on the ground, many of them in that document, state they thought there was one. There was never an arrest warrant issued. The arrest warrant was not issued until after 5 hours of holding Shauna, Ammon, Ryan, Buddha. Who else was in the car? We had 5 guys, didn't we? Anyhow, they were being held while that actual arrest warrant was put together. Still a proposed arrest warrant signed on the 26th. It's dated January 2nd, but it was not signed until January 26th. Lavoie Finicum's name, which is very interesting, he was involved on January 2nd, but his name wasn't on the document. So did they backdate the document? I say yes, they did. And then we have the fact that it's on the 27th it's recorded. So what we know is Lavoie Finicum was murdered. There was no arrest warrant issued. The proposed arrest warrant was issued based on what they might do, based on a 1.5-year trained Catherine Armstrong, who set the men up as a plant undercover to do things that they didn't do. She said they did, but I'll tell you what, 3 strikes you're out with us. And we've all heard too many lies already from the FBI. As has the Oregon State Police, Duchesne's, when they did the investigation. Thank you for those men who actually honestly said there's a problem, because those investigators found it.
And by the way, for those of you who are calling these people that we're calling whistleblowers, you're calling them criminals and crooks, that organization, the FBI, is under investigation.
Yes.
By 2 agencies already as a result of that.
And Craig Bretzing was already in trouble.
Oh, absolutely,
For his
in Utah.
in Utah.
Yes.
I'm holding here a paper from 1997, from August the 23rd, from Mary Jane Freeman, speaking about the FBI crime lab and their alleged experts in their so-called forensic lab, manufacturing evidence, false testifying, the thing that the FBI has been noted for repetitively, showing a pattern, practice, custom, and tradition of criminality under the mask of the color of law. In fact, if we look at this situation, the FBI has been notorious for involving low-level, mentally diminished actors to put into the place to equip them with the tools to commit their version of what's termed terrorism, so they can swoop in at the last minute and pretend to capture them to provide sustenance to support their preposterous position that they're doing something to defend America against foreign and domestic terrorists.
Well,
They fabricate.
and this fabrication and this falsehood, all of these falsehoods, this goes back even further. In 2008, Dr. Alan Keyes, who was then the ambassador to the United Nations, had been appointed by Ronald Reagan, had finished that job and decided to run for president. And so in 2008, he ran for president. Because of my working in Washington, D.C., and because of my working with the largest Protestant denomination in America, Southern Baptist, he asked me to consider being his vice presidential candidate. And I took the job. I took that. Now, when we filed our paperwork with the government, with the Bureau of Elections and so forth, we filled out all our paperwork, and on the last page it says, if there are any other documents you would like to attach to your application for president, in Mr. Key's case, vice president, in my case, attach them and show them as an addendum. And the Lord, I believe, gave me an idea to suggest to Mr. Keyes, and he took my suggestion, that we attach our birth certificate to our application for president and vice president. And we did that. And then, of course, we filed with the, quote, courts to make sure that Barry Soetoro, that is the man others call Barack Hussein Obama, that he do the same thing. Now the rest is history. He would not give us a birth certificate. We pushed it, we finalized it, we finally took the case all the way to the Supreme Court. And if you want to see that, just go to Drake v. Obama. And you will find that there is a case there that went all the way to the Supreme Court.
There's a commercial.
So
that's
this
gonna run that I
corruption is
can't
not
do
just
anything about
at a
making it go away
BLM or an
until it's
FBI
done doing
level.
its deed.
It's all the way at the top. Because
You know what I love
the
about history?
government,
What makes
court,
someone a bad
the
president?
United
It's
States
full of
Supreme
really
Court
interesting
said,
people.
Dr. Alan Key, who was the ambassador to the UN, and Wiley Drake, a two-term Vietnam veteran,
and the issues that are
that
history's
we
most
did not
fascinating.
have
When
standing.
the Pilgrims came
And
over
so
on the
we couldn't take
Mayflower,
that
they
case
ran out
any
of beer
further.
up around Plymouth.
That
and they decided, all right, we gotta
corruption
get out here.
So that was the
Started
first
at
beer
the top
run?
and has trickled all the way down to the FBI, to the BLM, and to the local authorities. And folks, if we don't clean it up, it ain't gonna get no better. It's gonna get a lot worse.
That's right.
Well, something that hasn't been mentioned yet that I think is a little bit appropriate, since we're sitting in Las Vegas and our representative is Harry Reid, is his connection with Bundy, his connection with the Animas River environmental insult. He has already sold this property, both properties, to the Chinese and to solar companies, etc. We know that the Hammond Ranch was sold to a Russian corporation by Hillary Clinton when she was in the Secretary of State's office. So there's a lot of culpability here, like you said,
That's
that
right.
start way up at the top of the so-called corporation.
That's right.
And they're enriching themselves, and they're inviting foreign and other foreign entities, because they're certainly foreign to the founding fathers' intent. So, it's foreign everywhere you look, and that's why, we have these terminologies: domestic enemies, foreign enemies, and stuff. Well, we're considered the enemies, and they are the actual foreign usurpers. So
Exactly
that
right.
needs to be tied
It's
into this as
flip-flop.
well.
Yes.
Well, and don't forget too, when we're sitting in that federal court today, it's a federal judge, it's a federal agents that are
They're all
arresting.
foxes
They're
guarding the
all
foxes.
guarding
Yeah.
And we're the hens.
And
Yeah.
and we are looked upon, and that's what we mentioned when we came out of there. The fact is we
The
are
stacked
treated
deck.
as
Yeah.
we are the ones that are the ones they're afraid of. So they stack the deck against us. They have all those agents out there loaded to the teeth with guns, when in fact, none of us, no one with the Bundys ever has pulled a trigger, ever has done anything. As a matter of fact, Mr. Bundy doesn't carry a gun, nor does Ammon Bundy. So Ammon's always loaded with his cell phone. What they had on the way to, and Lavoie was not armed, by the way.
That's right.
These reports come out, Lavoie was not armed.
When he
This-
grabbed his left hip, it was because he had just been shot there. He wasn't going for a gun.
Wow.
That's right. That's
And the evidence, this is what, because my background, I'm a private investigator. That's what I did the whole time I was in seminary. But the investigation now tells us that the FBI said, oh, he had a weapon in his pocket. And it was a weapon in his coat. But interestingly enough, that weapon, that serial number on that weapon, which can't lie, that weapon was stolen 3 years ago. They would have us believe that Lavoie Finicum, a rancher who certainly had enough money to buy a pistol, stole one 3 years ago. And lo and behold, where did the stolen gun show up? In his pocket. Well, again, a stacked deck.
Planted evidence.
You know, Wiley, your observations of that are very well proved out by the video that was recently released.
Absolutely.
When you see this group of men go up under the guise of giving care to a man who's dead,
Yeah.
and they cluster
Planet.
themselves around as blockers at a slot machine to hide somebody ripping off a slot machine with keys to access the inside. This was when they planted the pistol on Lavoie Finicum on his left-hand side, where they claimed there was a pocket where there was no pocket on the inside of his jacket for it to be in, and his under-shoulder holster that he had for his automatic pistol was back at the refuge, and he did not have a firearm with him to defend himself with in that truck, although there were 2 other long rifles and a pistol in the truck. No one ever suggested they pointed them at anybody. They never fired around, in spite of the fact they were fired on multiple times. I know that there was at least one that we don't ever hear on their version of the video where they shot at Ryan Payne whenever he leaned with his empty, unarmed hands outside the window and was fired in the general direction of. But if you listen to their released Portland FBI copy that was put out in their so-called press conference, I put italics around that, the other day, their false narrative, when they alleged that there were only maybe up to 9 shots fired, when you can
all
clearly...
9 of those went into Lavoy, by the way.
But if you listen to the sounds on the audio, you can hear in excess of 20 or 30 shots, in spite of the fact that Victoria Sharp suggested there were 120 or more, but there were substantially more than 10 shots fired in total, and we really would have to look at the individual who first shot at him was the idiot that jumped out in front of a moving truck that looked like he'd practiced it like a, I guess you could call him an actor or maybe a stuntman who practiced that event and took a shot there. Then there was someone from a high position tactical advantage tree stop fired down upon the truck, and that was before anybody exited the truck.
That was the round that hit Ryan Bundy.
That could be.
Shrapnel was in his shoulder.
Yeah, from what I saw, I
That
couldn't
was
tell
the
where
round,
it penetrated.
well, in the narrative, in the report, that they had to ban, but that was the one because it had shrapnel in it.
Correct.
So when that shot was fired down, that shot actually could have hit Victoria, but it was the second shot that they missed that the professionals are saying was intentional to draw the OSP to shoot and fire. So right now what we have is a you-know-what storm of he said, she said against the agencies, and the FBI are trying to say the OSP did it, and the OSP now got to stand and look at each other and say, holy moly, they shot at us in order for us to draw fire to a truck where there was no return fire. They were hoping for return fire.
Let's talk about this a little bit. Every one of those officers is hired by the federal government. They have a fiduciary interest in the outcome of the case. They are owned by the federal government, and they're going to tell the story that the federal prosecutors and law enforcement officials of Bretzling and others would tell them what to say. In fact, they probably combed their reports with a fine-tooth comb to make sure they said it in exactly the right words to give them the pretense for defense. But their words are worth nothing. They have a vested interest, therefore they're hearsay witnesses under the hearsay rule. They aren't competent to give evidence because they have a self-conflicted interest in the case outcome.
And isn't that interesting today? What did that judge do? He laid all the facts on the table to be around what the U.S. government, which we know is not a government, the U.S. government narrative, where he said, this is what they said in their report, this is what I see, and what was he doing? Basically trying Mr. Bundy today from the bench to be guilty because he decided that the narrative that the U.S. government was giving him was the one that he was going to listen to and say Mr. Bundy was a threat to society.
In fact, the judge relied on double hearsay because the people in Oregon had no knowledge of the crimes he was alleged to have committed here in Nevada that they arrested him for, so therefore they were operating on second, third. You got about 4 different layers of hearsay supposed testimony used to predicate this false claim against the Bundy of him being a danger to society, clear and credible danger that he would be an imminent threat and a flight risk. There is no evidence to support that, so that's all the judge's own personal legal perceptions and theories that he put out as dictum whenever he had a fiduciary conflicted interest himself in the outcome of the case and covering up the crimes that were committed against the Bundys when they stole their land in the first place. 4 different court proceedings before, and I think if you look back, that's in the time of what was called Operation Greylord here in Las Vegas, when they had the cover-up and they arrested Judge Harry Claiborne and other judges here in Nevada for the criminality of taking bribes and fixing cases to protect their friends and cronies.
Exactly.
Well, and you know, in case someone's thinking, well, you're just anti-FBI, you're just anti this pressure government. No, we're trying to clean the government up. A dear friend of mine by the name of Phil Haney was a high-up leader in Homeland Security, doing his job, investigating foreign terrorists on this soil. And he filed his report with Washington, D.C., and said one particular man and one particular woman who had come to this country to destroy America, and he had all that evidence. They had gotten a job here in this country. They had gotten married. They had had a baby, and they were working. And all of a sudden, one day, they went to a child care center and killed 14 people in San Bernardino. Now, Phil Haney was the whistleblower that gave that case and told them that they should watch those people, and they said no.
How long before?
Well, it was months before. But they said, no, put that down. Don't show that. Don't reveal that. And as it turned out, he ended up coming up on retirement time and retired. And then after that happened, he said the president himself has blood on his hands because he said, my report. And he put that report out then and showed them that he had reported the man and the woman by name, nationality, address, and so forth were stationed and living in San Bernardino. And then on that January the 26th, they went in and shot 14 people.
Well, Pastor Wiley, under Occam's razor, where we eliminate every other possibility and look at what's left, the only reason one could possibly conclude that they would stop an investigation like that would be if they were involved or had a direct interest in the outcome of the event itself to prosecute an anti-American political agenda of destroying this country and fabricating false pretenses to create fear and to take away more rights, to assassinate the Second Amendment protections for us to have the ability to defend our families and others against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And think about this. The emails that came out that we now know went back and forth between the FBI, who actually was in charge now because of those emails we know right from the beginning on January 2nd. The emails came out from Kate Brown's office, FBI, other agencies, and they all agreed on one day that the narrative was growing too much, that it was spreading, that people were starting to actually head towards the side of Ammon and his men because they were peaceful men.
Yes.
They were not doing anything bad. People were going to the constitutional classes. They were going to see Chris Ann Hall. So the actual email says it's spreading. We've got to do something now before it's too late. They mentioned that strip of highway. So when you mention that strip of highway and you have all these agencies involved with setting up this assassination, when you have the FBI drawing fire to attempt to get the Oregon State Police to fire, which they did, they started firing, but the problem is everything they've attempted to do, believing that the American patriot is going to, the whistleblowers are going to fire back, didn't happen. The American people did not go, the militias did not come in mass numbers for the bloodbath that they had prepared. So they had to keep changing their strategy because the people were too smart to fall for their tricks. Exactly. We were on air constantly, Shelley, I, other people, talking about how, guys, this is a setup. There's something majorly wrong here. We had so many people involved. The only people, if you go back now, that anyone should even have faith in hearing is Lloyd, Brian Bundy, and Alan Bundy. Anyone besides those three people are so compromised just in the fact of the way these things played out. You also have Mark McConnell, who was the one driving the jeep that Alan was in. That was pulled over the day Roy Finnegan was arrested. He was armed, loaded gun.
Not arrested.
Not arrested. Allowed to keep his pistol. Got his truck back. You have to question when they're arresting and calling all of this gun control. How are you letting one man go with an armed with an actual loaded gun. He's the only one they actually, he had a loaded gun on him that got let go. So I'm just saying this whole thing, and then we sit and we watch this judge, lawyer from the bench. He's practicing law from the bench today. That's what he did,
Assisting the prosecution.
and that's not lawful. And yet I heard not one objection or protest, not one question of jurisdiction. We saw a deputy stand so Mrs. Bundy could not see Mr. Bundy for quite some time. She was blocked. We saw men standing in that courtroom literally glaring as if somebody was going to attack.
Today.
Yeah.
But what we know is we want to tell these agencies, these corporations that are running for profit, the American people do not have a bloodbath on their bucket list. Our bucket list consists of gaining back those freedoms of which they've attempted to grand larceny through counterfeit,
That's right.
piracy, and treason, steal from the American people. We do not have a bucket list to go against a government. We do not have a bucket list that includes shooting police or shooting sheriffs. As a matter of fact, many of us are related to them. Many of us love the sheriffs and the police. Many of us have family members who work for the federal government. So this isn't about an us against them. This is America against foreign agents.
Amen. And fact of the matter is, to reinforce what you were just talking about, is simply to say this. The Congressional Prayer Conference, of which I had the privilege to be the chairman since 2000, we pray every day, by first and last name for every one of the U.S. senators. We also pray by name the congressman in the U.S. Congress. We also pray for every what we call first responder, military, fire, paramedics. We pray for them on an everyday basis. And our motto is, one nation under God is what we need back. And unless we get that, we're going to continue to have these tragedies occur, not only on the local level, but I'll take you even internationally for a moment. You see, some of you remember a thing called Benghazi. Mm-hmm. Hillary stood up and Obama stood up and said, Benghazi, those 4 Americans in that little building, it wasn't an embassy, they called it that, it was a little compound. Those 4 men were brutally murdered, and Hillary and Obama said it was because of a movie that an Arab man from Egypt made called The Innocence of Muslims. And it was a movie not about the innocence, but about the antagonism of the Muslims, and he made that movie, and Hillary said that's what caused Benghazi and 4 deaths. And Obama said that's what caused Benghazi and the 4 deaths. And then they even finally admitted, no, yes, it was Al-Qaeda that did it.
Al-CIA.
Yeah, and
It was gun running.
Yeah, and because they...
child sex trafficking.
Absolutely. And because they did that, then they said, okay, we have to have a scapegoat. And so they got the man that made the movie, The Innocence of Muslim, and they put him in jail. And he appealed and made them consider the legality of it, and they found out that he had to be probationed out. And they probationed him out to our church sanctuary in California. Nakula Basila Nakula is in our church as we speak today on the West Coast. And we are continuing to pray and continuing to work, and we're continuing to deal with these situations that have become so prolific all over our government. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to get our government back in control.
And I want to bring up Loretta Lynch. She made a trip to Portland to condemn the political prisoners, to give announcement that there may be more charges which is what they do. They pile the charges. And what was interesting is while she was in Oregon, she actually went to a meeting with a police organization. And while she was there, it was Portland. What was the name of that group? It was one of the groups in Portland. Anyhow, they brought up and started asking her by surprise. They surprised her there about Fast and Furious. And she could not run faster or more furious out of the building. So what we know is she was there, again, a narrative. And you know what?
Script.
It's all scripted. And so we have to be smart enough.
Right.
And we have to be wise enough to not say, oh, these people are nuts. They don't know what they're talking about. Okay, well, we may be nuts because guess what? We are speaking out.
Yeah.
But you know what? We've gotten a little this way due to the fact that we've all been victimized and have had tyrannical things happen to each of us. So we have come together more and more because of the fact that we've all had something happen that's caused us to become brothers and sisters other than just in Christ.
Exactly.
So we have become family of people who are working hard to now, and the other thing that's interesting is more people right now are fleeing their U.S. citizenship to become
Yes.
Americans.
Yep.
And what that means is not what most people think. They think, oh, you're giving up your U.S. citizenship. No, we've just now figured out that there was a document created that created a legal fiction called a U.S. citizen that separates us from the born man or woman and allowed them to use us as their beneficial interest and steal from us.
Yeah.
And what is happening in that courtroom right there is not Mr. Bundy. It's his birth certificate. It's the all caps name that's the U.S. citizen they have in that courtroom. They have no jurisdiction over the man. So I just want to bring that up because people need to recognize that we have now had this huge awakening as to what U.S. citizen really means and what being born unto the woman under the law really means. That means you're born alive. But when you are issued that birth certificate, that creates a dead, it's a decedent, it's a child decedent.
Yeah.
And until you know that that birth certificate is not you, that that's a business, and I'm going to leave this with that because we have more to talk about, but people need to do their DBAs.
Yeah.
They need to separate themselves lawfully from that name because the legal name, as you'll see billboards now going up all over the United States of America, and I don't mean the corporate United States, I mean the states, where the state citizens are on the land. This billboards are going up. It is illegal to use the legal name.
Yeah.
So that is a reason today we have political prisoners in jail. If you go to jail and you're kidnapped into the system, now mind you, the DOJ has now come out and has started brandishing judges who are taking people who've had traffic violations and such who can't afford the tickets. They are now saying, knock it off. You do not throw these people in jail just because they can't afford to pay a traffic ticket.
Yeah, and
Okay.
let me just tell you a little bit about what's happening in the jails. For example, you talked about the Hammonds a while ago. Here's a man and his son who went back to prison because the courts put them back in jail. They were in jail at Terminal Island Prison in California, 20 miles from my church front door. I went over to Terminal Island and said, I'm a member of the clergy. I would like to have a visit with these two men. They would not even let me in the visitor center. And they said, because you're not a licensed chaplain on our staff. And I said, I've been a pastor since 1964. I've got more degrees than a thermometer, and I've got all of this, and I am a pastor, and I want to pay a visit. And because I wasn't on their staff, I could not be. I have been in more prisons all over the country, and usually all you have to do is walk up there and say, hey, I'd like to visit this lady who's in prison. Her name and number is, and they say, okay, prove that you're a minister, and you do it, and they give you a visit. But I tried for over 2 weeks to get in there to visit the Hammonds, and they said no. In fact, the last time I visited there were several family members of the Hammond family that said, we've been trying to get in there for 2 weeks ourselves, and they won't even let us visit our own family.
That's very
Pastor,
typical.
what you're seeing is the effect of the privatization of these prisons. It's the Corrections
Exactly.
Corporation of America Incorporated, which are private for-profits detention facilities.
Yes.
And these demonic black robe high priest of Baal judges, like the one we saw this morning, who are
Yeah.
perverting the law to their own private self-interest enrichment under the guise of these pretentious absurdities uttered by Chief Justice John Paul Roberts, who told them to quit being neutral, independent, fair arbiters of justice, but to get down off the bench and pitch or hit for whichever side serves their own self or the bar's interest in particular. What we're looking for as Americans is a restoration to the Creator's common law, where the people are involved in oversight to keep these criminal officials from acting outside scope sphere of law and becoming outlaws themselves. And this pretensive mythological illusion of self-policing is creating a clear and present danger
Amen.
to the American people and to the survival of the republic in this country unless we take our rightful position at the top of the pyramid and be good stewards over our servants that are supposed to be elected to service, not their own self-interest of avaricious interest and predatory greed that they want to dwell off or eke out our wealth, as spoke to by Frederick Bastiat in
Yes.
his treatise The Law.
And you know, when you're talking about the profits, the thing here with the prison system, and in California, because what you just said, many people will hear that and say, oh, that's just rambling, show us proof, right? Well, there is proof. The prison system in California brandished the Attorney General's office for not having enough prisoners and stated that they were going to have problems if they didn't keep those jails filled. This is a fact. So what we know is, through our research, is the Attorney General, where we all believe we are electing someone who is helping the people, the Attorney General's job is to protect the state. And the state is the all-cap corporation. And their third-party contractors are, guess who? The prisons, the courts, the sheriffs, all of these that third-party contract with your local government, your state officials, and guess who comes last? Not even us, because we are not state employees. We have nothing to do with their bottom line other than we have to fill the prisons.
Yep.
Because the funds are being made there. So if you call the Attorney General and you think we're not getting help, well, they're not there to help you. They're not there to help you. Your local government is your first line, and guess who it is? Your sheriff. And your sheriff right now is under the biggest gun themselves because the federal government wants to do away with the sheriffs. They've already combined the marshals into the sheriff's departments in many areas.
Yep.
So we no longer have U.S. Marshals in every courthouse. And the problem there is the U.S. Marshal was also supposed to protect we the people. So when you take the U.S. Marshals out and your Provost Marshal won't come in to help anymore. So what do? We do exactly what we're doing here. We're saying, guys, you better start looking who you're really working for.
Yep.
Because you yourselves know of a partner, of someone who worked in the department with you,
That's right.
who has been either jailed. We have many. Mark Lipton is one. He's a gentleman who was a police officer who was jailed unlawfully. We've got a lot of them who speak out. Okay, if speaking out creates an avenue for you to be jailed as a criminal, we are no longer in America, because the one thing that's great about America is we're supposed to have the freedom to speak, the
That's
freedom
right.
to say what we want. And what I'm going to tell you now, I have verification of, but I can't tell the whole story. Our prison system right now, the administration put in what's called the importation legislation. And that is about the prison system, and that's about the lateral release and lateralizing federal prisoners into other jurisdictions. And what they'll do is they'll go from another state, they'll bring these gentlemen in, and I'm going to tell you right now, we know that the Prius program, it's called the Prius, just like those electric cars, they're supposed to be teaching the sheriffs and the police how to handle foreign prisoners, but they're not giving them their training. This is training that's not happening because they are told, we've been told this, that they have been told to give Muslims better treatment, to not allow them to get in trouble. We have men with prayer rugs who are very big men being lateralized through the importation lateralization who are being used as rape machines upon young white men. We have white supremacists being used against young black men. Is this a nation divided? No, it's a nation being divided on purpose through a prison system that's a private prison system, who also now has the juvenile detention center called the Abraxas Juvenile Detention Center, which is also led for the rehabilitation through levels and stages of rehabilitation, which leads into very similar to Scientology and to LDS training. What it is they call it reprogramming. When I hear someone say we're reprogramming our youth and they're aged 11 to 17, and you know a lot of these children no longer have parents and they're taken into this Abraxas system, it's the perfect system to allow someone who's a probate judge to find bodies to go with a birth certificate, to launder funds through a probate department. And guess where? If it's unattested, if it's an estate that no one is there to claim, where do you think the money goes at the top? People think it's the state. It's not. It's the BLM.
That's right. Amen. And one of the other things, folks, we've got to do something about this. And one of the things that I and others, and this is going to sound like I'm doing a commercial, but that's okay, I hope. And that is, there's an organization called Guardians of the Oath. We, as an organization, Guardians of the Oath, are asking people to say, please demand that your officers keep their oath. And we have Kim with us today. Kim, tell us a little bit about Guardians.
Well, Guardians of the Oath was born from the Oath Keepers. And the way we are different from the Oath Keepers, the Oath Keepers reach, teach, and inspire those who have taken an oath to the Constitution to honor their oath to the Constitution and to not obey unconstitutional orders, as what happened in Hurricane Katrina. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos where the law enforcement went door to door and confiscated people's weapons. There's a video of a little old woman that was knocked down, and they took her pistol and removed her from her house. And and if you look at one of the patches on one of the officers, it says California Highway Patrol on his patch. But then yet there was a National Guard unit from Utah that went to Katrina, and they were told to do the same thing, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. And that's how Oath Keepers came to be. Was we want those that have taken their oath to the Constitution to not obey unconstitutional orders. So Guardians of the Oath was basically born from Oath Keepers, and the only difference is that the Oath Keepers reaches out to the active duty military and law enforcement. Guardians of the Oath, we want to reach out to the elected officials, the politicians.
And so basically, we didn't separate. I'm a chaplain still for Oath Keepers and a chaplain for Guardians of the Oath. We work together, but it's in just a little different way. One being the Guardians of the Oath, a little bit more political, as opposed to Oath Keepers, that's not quite as political. But all of this is being done, and I'm not doing this just to promote, but it's being done because what I want to promote here is a conversion of our thinking about all of those prisoners, those youth, all of those politicians that are being absolutely drawn into the system of overrunning, violating their oath of office, whether it's police, fire, whatever, but violating that. And we need to get them back to where they can do their job to make America a great nation again.
And I want to bring up that since you said making America great again, we want to remember that one of the political prisoners right now is number 2 in command for Donald Trump in New Hampshire, Jerry DeLemus. He's been forgotten about. And Donald Trump's running for president. We know he's come out against the BLM. Actually, many of them have now. We've got many backing him. But I would like to put a shout out to Donald Trump and say, sir, you've got your second in command from New Hampshire, a 61-year-old wonderful veteran who did nothing but stand guard on private property for a family who was being terrorized. If you're going to arrest people for standing guard on private property, you better start looking in Beverly Hills, in the Hamptons, in Hollywood, because you've got a bunch of movie stars and rich people with guards who are armed,
That's right.
guarding perimeters. So if this is what people are being arrested for from Bunkerville, you have to think twice about what's the real narrative. You have a right to guard your property. You have a right to guard your perimeter because it's called sovereign borders. Even a fence line is your sovereign border to your property. So America needs their sovereign borders. We need our sovereign borders around our property and around us, our families. And all we ask is that you stop attacking the American men and women. And what have the American men and women done to make our own government hate us so much?
Good question.
Oh, is it to me?
It's back to you.
Oh, well. The herd usually goes from 2 to 3, but we can always extend if we'd like to for whatever important information we'd still like to get out there. I'm not too sure that does Mr. Bundy have a lawyer yet?
Yes.
Okay.
He does have, and one of the things we're going to be, in fact, I had a meeting today after the hearing, after the fiasco of saying he was such a danger to mankind.
The kangaroo court.
You know, the kangaroo court put him back in jail. I had the opportunity then to meet, sit down privately, no reporters, nobody else, just his attorney and me. And he said, look, this is going to be a long battle. And so we're saying out there to all the people, attorneys have to eat just like everybody else, and they have to be paid. And I assure you that whoever his attorney is, they will not be getting the big buck attorneys, but they do need attorneys. And we're going to be coming to you later through the Guardians and through the TV shows and through the radio shows to ask people to donate to help us raise the money that we need to mount a defense for our dear friend Cliven Bundy.
And remember, these are not the only political prisoners in the United States of America. Our prisons are full of young men, young women, older men, older women, veterans who have done nothing. They're victimless crimes, and they're being held as political prisoners because all they are saying, all you have to do is mention the Constitution, freedom, the fact that you're a living, breathing man or woman, and it pulls a psych eval. And they'll pull in multiple psychologists to say that you're nuts, that you're on suicide watch. That's the pattern. They throw them into solitary confinement, of which they bring in what we believe are actors to pretend to be crazy people in that same cell with you. They literally take feces and throw them on the wall like monkeys. This is an atrocity. We have men and women chained without food, being thrown on the ground where they're being videoed, laughed at, violated, beaten. And all of this is being done, and our attorney generals of the United States of America, the all caps United States Incorporated, are there to protect the prisons. What about the people, the real people who are there just for the buck? Yep. If all this is about, why does the United States have the largest prison system in the world? Because it's the most profitable, and it's time to take the money out of living.
And it's partially keeping the economy afloat, because between that and the legal drug trade that's going on with the troops guarding the poppy fields in Afghanistan and funneling them through America, that's keeping the economy afloat. It would have crashed a long time ago.
That's right.
And the work. People think all of the jobs are being sent out of the country. Well, what none of these politicians are talking about is the fact that the prison system is actually a slave system, making products for Home Depot, IKEA, other large corporations. So you have prisoners who are daily working, and on top of it now, they're charging them a daily fee for being in jail. So I know in Indiana, a friend of mine, the jail system, now he's been arrested multiple times. Now he's finally put them in their place. They're not going to arrest him anymore. But it's $136 a day the state gets. they give to the private prison or the private, jail. And he got charged $26 a day for being in there. So you start doing the math on people who have no money, who are put in the jail because they can't pay a traffic ticket, and then on top of that, they're going to be charged $26 to $50 a day, and yet the state is already paying for them to be there. Do you not see a problem with profit here? Because what they're doing is they're creating a complete and utter failure for any man or woman to even come out of that system alive. Yesterday, a man
team has
committed
pregame
suicide
rituals.
in an Indiana prison, of which there had already been 3 horrific rapes reported by these rape bodies.
Big Frosted Flakes, one of
bilateral
yours.
women. And now yesterday a man committed suicide. What
Kellogg's
question is
Frosted
that?
Flakes. They're great. Whatever you do to
When you
prepare,
have big
show
men
your
who
stripes.
rape people, and they're being put in comfy cells with pizza delivery, I don't know about you, but to me, that's got to end.
Yes.
And this is valid information. This is not being made up. The jailers know it. I have a girlfriend in Colorado right now in jail, and the woman jailer that takes care of her admitted she's innocent. And yet she's been held since September. We have innocent people incarcerated for the mighty buck that's being laundered through dirty money. Now, if you know anything about attorneys, the ABA president, when he was president, 2020 did an episode, I think it was CBS actually, and 16 attorneys were approached in an undercover sting for a story, and they were asked to launder dirty money from out of the country. How can we do this? Only 1 out of the 16 said it wasn't something he'd do. The other 15, mind you, they also had partners sitting at the tables. You can Google this. CBS interviews attorneys, and they all gave reasons how to avoid and why you want to avoid being the one known whose money it is. So they help them set up LLCs. They help them set up straw corporations. And this is exactly what the United States Incorporated has done through all of these bureaus and all of these agencies that they've created underneath them. This is how they launder the funds to hide the international dirty money, drug money, gun money that's coming through our country, going through the probate courts, going through the prison system, funneling out through grants and foundations of the BLM, the home and parks and games, and it's coming right back into our counties. Harney County alone, on 3 grants. Now, mind you, Burns has 7,500 people. $500 million in grants on just 3 that I had investigated. $500 million being funneled back in through grants for the BLM into the land. And people think it's all about the uranium. Well, when they're giving you a narrative, you have to question. And when you look across the United States, the other tribes across the United States don't want the uranium caves. They want them shut down because they're dangerous. So we have to question what really is at stake here. Millions of dollars being laundered through the system in order to perpetuate gains for the very wealthy at the top, at our expense.
Doesn't that follow the age-old adage, follow the money?
Yep.
Isn't that what Hillary Clinton has done?
Yep.
Her and Harry Reid with the Reid LLC Trust and the Cedar Family Trust.
Yep.
They've used it as a money laundering, in violation of the Anti-Money Laundering Acts, to enrich themselves. The Clinton Foundation, administered by her daughter and Webster Hubble, the Clinton Foundation, where they've held up the Russian government to sell the elements and precious metals and uranium from both the Bundy and Finicum and the Hammonds properties to foreign enemies of America, the Russians, who have bought the economic interest from the uranium through their shill corporation in Canada, Rosatom or Rosatom, was the parent company in Russia. And of course, Uranium One is the shill entity in Canada that masks itself to be able to buy it to convey the sale that has enriched the Hillary Clinton Foundation, or Clinton as it may be, with several payments of $2.5 million or $1 trillion. I don't even know the
Well,
amounts.
I want to bring in another variance of this. I want you to think about something. Hillary Clinton right now is winning the Democratic ticket. Now, you have to question if, in fact, is she a straw woman for the country? Is the Clinton Foundation an LLC that's a shell company to take the fall and not really fall because they're not taking her down?
I've seen some very strong indications that her motto, something about Hillary to save U.S. U.S. has been redefined, and it now means the UN. They're placing UN police agents in every police station in America as part of the global takeover of the Sovietization and centralization of the global UN control of America if we don't watch it very closely.
Let me put this into simple terms for the average mom or dad out there. Your FBI, takes people and uses them to create a narrative. They pay them a lot of money. If you've got a homeless man paid $250,000 to entrap innocent people in Utah, in Nevada, in Oregon, why would it be that much further of a thought? $250,000 to one homeless man is probably a couple $1 billion to the Clintons. So if you're going to bribe people to do what you want them to do, and the federal government has proven that's what they do, it's not a far-fetched to say the reason Hillary's getting away with what she's doing is because she's being paid to do it.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
paying others to get away with it.
Yeah.
There you go. So
Well,
that's
and even
just-
even years ago, when the FBI was far better than they are now, there was a gentleman that had the western 2/3 of the United States by the name of Ted Gunderson. And Ted Gunderson was a mighty, mighty man of God and ran a tight ship at the FBI. Well, it finally came time, as it does to a lot of us, that age creeps up, and he finally got to the point to where he was going to retire. Well, he retired, and when he retired, he was going to begin to tell some stories about some things that had happened with the FBI, and lo and behold, he died. Everybody said, well, he was an old man. Well, he didn't die from old age. He died from arsenic poisoning.
Yeah, and they don't really. You have to, when you think about criminals and their patterns, they repeat the same pattern, because if you deviate from a pattern, all of a sudden you forget the lie. What are we saying? So
Right.
you continue the same pattern. So we have a pattern where men are incarcerated, they're accused of being pedophiles, they're accused of being abusers, they're accused of being thieves, and then they're thrown into a jail cell where they're accused of being crazy because they're saying I have rights, and then they're held without charges, and they're not let out of jail even though they're innocent. Now we have Mr. Bundy, who has never committed a real crime, never even had a ticket, who doesn't have a gun that he carries, who was loaded with a bulldozer that wouldn't start, all because what does he have that is the one thing they want to stop the most is the power of the word. The biggest threat we are is what we're doing here. And that's what they want to shut down.
Yeah, amen, amen.
I think Bundy had at least contacts with Fox News and Hannity and things of that nature. And just as that was going on, whoever started coming out with this narrative, well, he's just not paying his rent for the land and this and that. And that's what kind of had a lot of effect in destroying him, because a lot of the low information people said, well, what the hell does he think here? Well, the truth probably be known. It's probably not the government's land that they're trying to charge him for. It's probably land that's been in the Bundy family for 3,000
Since
years
1877. Since
or something.
1877.
And that narrative doesn't get out there.
Yeah.
Because as good as a contact is, it gets national exposure on Hannity or something like that. It's very limited, it's very short, and you don't get to tell the whole story. And how can you even get the whole story out there when you're dealing with 50% of the people don't know what 2 and 2 is anymore? They have no
And
clue.
why is it they aren't talking about the fact that these men didn't even trespass? These men were given keys. They were given open doors. This is what they are not talking about. Dennis Michael Lynch has had all of these people on. I have watched his interviews with Jeanette, with Shauna Cox, with a lot of the Bundy families, and I have sent him all of the stories we've written with the facts in them. But not once have you heard him even, who is supposed to be for the people, mention the fact that he's been sent the proof that they had an open door. They weren't trespassing. They were offered occupancy.
Well, the problem
So-
is we've digressed from back years ago when you had 60 Minutes and you had that did actually informative stories that were true. The government has shut them down because the stories have now become the government. And when you go after the government, you have arsenic poisoning.
That's right. You get shut down.
Right. So there you go. So we're fighting the government. So where do you go? I don't know unless
Well,
it's the
remember, we're
pitchfork
fighting
and
a
sickles.
corporation. We're
and
fighting a
whatever.
corporation. And
Under the auspices.
Well, it's
of
the same thing
Exactly.
because they all throw up the we're the government, we're the government, we're the government. You know.
And you know, today when they talked about government spending and how expensive things were, if you looked over at how many bodies they had in that room sitting to back up that
Oh,
attorney
yeah,
that
sure.
stood there, and you have to question, sir, we hear what you're saying, but we're looking around, where's the victim? Where's the victim? There is no victim.
No,
Other
did his
than
lawyer say that?
the
No.
people. We are the victim. Mr.
Who's
Bundy is
his
the victim.
lawyer? Is he's in on the system?
Yeah.
That's it. They're all in on the system.
Right.
He's a
That's
bar
the problem.
Bar card carrier.
Yep.
And so when you have 16 attorneys who are put under the gun to help launder dirty money from a foreign country, who actually, 15 of those agencies actually agree to help or help give information on how to launder it, and the one literally says a bar card is a license to steal.
Oh.
We own this country. Listen to that interview, people, CBS did. Read the articles we're putting out. Go to the Cowboy and the Lady. Go to Wiley Drake. Go to Shelley's show, Shelley Johnson. Listen to what we're putting out because they're facts. This is not propaganda that is being set out. There's no such thing as a sovereign citizen. No such thing as a sovereign citizen. You can't be sovereign and a citizen in the same breath. One is a slave and one is free. And why do you think these politicians are standing up there talking about our sovereign borders? Why is it okay for men running for president to stand up and tell how awful Obama is and how our borders need to be, our sovereign borders need to be protected, but yet we have political prisoners, common
There
men
wouldn't
and
be
women
anyone
in
talking
jail.
about it if it wasn't for a guy named Trump running,
Exactly.
who's not part of the system.
Exactly.
So I think of Mr. Bundy. I know they all say, well, anyone that has themselves as a lawyer is a fool. And that's all put out by the lawyers. The last thing I think Mr. Bundy needs, I'm not giving advice, but maybe not a pro se, but somebody that's representing him is not a goddamn lawyer. Pardon my friend.
No.
Because I'm mad about this.
I
Not
agree.
a lawyer in the system. Because that doesn't work.
It doesn't.
Because the system is fixed. You can't do anything against a judge in this town because you'll never get a right ruling. You have to campaign, contribute to the judge, or you'll never get a right ruling. And if you don't get any right rulings, you don't have any clients because you never win. And you have to go somewhere else. This whole system in Nevada is fixed. Fixed, and it's destroyed. Well,
Do you remember the name Gordon Martinez?
yeah.
Okay, well, Mr. Martinez is a friend of mine. I adore Gordon. I was actually one of a group that was helping on his campaign. Those two idiots that were set up by
Jared
the
and
FBI.
Amanda Miller.
Yes, the day they murdered those two police officers was the day we were supposed to be out campaigning for Gordon Martinez for sheriff. We had Gordon Martinez for sheriff t-shirts. Guess what the one picture that was the first one put out after that murder? It was that Jared with a Gordon Martinez for sheriff t-shirt. We got a call from him and he said, do not get those shirts off right now. Do not go stand on that corner. We've been set up.
In
It's
fact,
basically what
if you
we
look who
felt.
set it up, it was the individual who was selected by the aforementioned previous sheriff that was sent to FBI Quantico Crisis Actor Event Management Training School. Joe Lombardo, who's the sheriff now, who placed or had his operative place it into the hands of Jared Miller, a brand new out of the package campaign shirt from his opponent.
And that's why we had to get our shirts off as fast as we could, because when that picture came up across the screen, we knew, and Gordon knew, Target zone. And so we went right back to the hotel, and we all just sat there and said, oh my gosh, they just set Gordon up big time. And the narrative is that we had 2 Bundy supporters, when in fact both of them were made to leave Bunkerville because of their erratic behavior. So there we go again with the lies being put out when you have very good, God-fearing, family-loving, family-caring ranchers who get up at the crack of dawn. They're not getting up at dawn doing crack. You know, these are good people.
That's right.
Well, the other factor that we haven't brought up here, and I think it's important to note, is that the land that the ranchers and the farmers and the gardeners and the orchard workers, that land is being targeted because that land feeds America. And the entities that control the land, control the food, control whether we live or die.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
And you know, Google Arden Bundy and listen to his few minutes from after the day that Mel and David Bundy were, actually David I think is going to be in court tomorrow. We're hoping he gets released. But listen to that young man.
He's not even 18 yet.
Had to give up his senior year. He's not planning prom. He's planning staying out of the BLM target zone when he turns 18. This boy should be planning he's an A student, he's a scholar. This kid is smart, he's well spoken. He is a family man already. And what's sad is not only has he had to grow up, he was forced to grow up under tyranny.
Yep.
And that's a shame.
And the reason Renee brought up Arden is because he speaks to the land control and the food aspect of this. He's very savvy about what's going on there. So I urge everybody to listen to Arden Bundy,
Yes.
the soon-to-be 18-year-old who's trying to steer clear of the BLM target zone.
The way I look at things too is most other countries and other empires like the Roman Empire and so forth, they all last about 200 years. And what happens is you start a country, everybody's got great ideas, and then it goes, and then people get power, and power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolute, and then it goes on and on and on and on. And by the time you've had this thing in motion for 200 years something, everybody's totally corrupt, everything fails, everything falls off the cliff, because that's the natural progression of things when you're dealing with humans.
Yep.
Is you're going to get 2 factors. One's going to take and one's going to, be taken from. And then you're going to fall off the cliff. We've been going a little longer than that, not much more, but look what we started with.
Yeah.
We have more resources, more capabilities than any other empire that's ever come along. And we're really the first one that didn't try to take over the rest of the world. We're the first one in a disaster to be lending aid and everything, but it's the government that has become the enemy of this country, and it's going to cause the collapse.
Yeah.
Now, how do you fix that? Because we've had our 250 years. We're done.
And you know what's even
How do we
scarier?
fix it?
We have Putin who's making more sense than our own president.
Well, that till we get a new president,
Yeah,
but we've known that
right now, I'd love if somebody has a cell phone number to old Pooty. Give him a call and let him know his Russian mercs are murdering people in the United States of America.
He just had one knocked off in Washington, D.C. Didn't I don't know who knocked him off. Could have been Putin knocked him off, but it was his press secretary or something.
Yeah.
His Joss Ernest.
So
But
we are heading there, and I have
It takes 200 years.
I have a
and
strong faith. I believe we are healing. I believe because of what we have around this table right now is professional people who are having a conversation that is of truth and value for others to hear. And when we know that just coming together and sharing the truth and getting the investigation done so that we learn, any mother who has a kid show up at home with a bloody nose, Do you think that mom's going to let that go? She's going to be your worst nightmare till she finds out who popped her kid in the nose. That's what this country is. We got a lot of bloody noses.
That's
It's
right.
time to find out who's bloody in the nose,
right.
clean it up, not just Band-Aid it, and stop the
Mother
bully
bear.
from murdering and maligning the American people.
Amen. Amen.
I think that one of the solutions I put out on my show is what I call civil tribunals, which on a very, very local level, but all over, you have to start where a community gets together and said, like a business person, maybe a teacher, maybe not a lawyer, not a judge, forget that. Somebody in the community that has common sense, you might have to pass a test, what's 2 and 2, maybe, but then you pick like 5 people in this community, and you're going to sit on a civil tribunal for maybe 2 years, if that's when your election cycle kinds of hits. You go with a ballot, and these people are elected. And guess what these people have? Authority over everybody, because they're the people's people.
Yeah.
And you know what?
And then from the bottom
Bottom
up, you
up.
got to start this as low as can be, because you try to go higher, you're going to get killed, you're going to get arsenic. You're going
Remember,
to be
there's a
gonzo.
safety
So it has to start from the
Safety
bottom and
committee
go
like
up.
they're doing in Harney.
And that started with 3 people and is over 150 people strong now. And I want to mention, too, for those listening, I found out today, Tom called me and said that Steve Grasty is attempting right now to shut down the music festival that's supposed to be coming up the first week of April
To raise money.
for the ranchers. So Steve Grasty, Mr. Probate Judge, Mr. Head of Vital Statistics, Mr. Head of this recordation system, Mr. Every BLM and, committee there could be, he and his wife are on, you name it. He's got all these jobs he does. He owns the county. Look into it, folks. His name is right there as owner. You've got to question, this man wants to shut down a music festival. This is a music festival. So what do? Do we shut down everything Grasty wants to do to toot his own horn? Because he's doing it to others.
Clark, to support your point about the common law grand jury or civil tribunals you spoke of, the recent murdered Justice Scalia, although there were a lot of very inappropriate dark clouds circling around the circumstances of his murder, in a recent decision, U.S. versus Williams, I think it was, supported the fact that the people, fifth branch of government, the common law grand jury of the people that was supposed to be the stewards to oversee and to ensure that their public servants stayed within the confines of their limited powers that they were granted by the power of the people, who are the preeminent below the creator connection to their employment nexus, were the ones who were supposed to ride herd over them, not barred, licensed, esquired, pretender defenders and pro se executors, but the people's grand juries, the civil tribunals you speak of. Local rule rules best. Whenever you are ruled by foreign terrorcrats masquerading as being interested in your interest, when they're
Right.
thousands of
out.
miles
Yeah,
away and
yeah.
ignorant of everything going in the local community, that's exactly why local rule rules best explicitly.
Amen. Amen.
You answer to the people. These civil tribunals, they only answer to the people. And they are over everybody. The judges, you name it, all elected officials, everybody operating that community. These 5, let's say, elected people are over everybody. And they last 2 years, that's it, they're gonzo. And you get another group of whatever people. And your job is to make sure that if something smells, you look into it. And you have the authority to look into it, and you have the authority to shut it down. And who do you answer to? If the people that elected you don't like what you're doing, they can speak up.
That's
But no
right.
judge can shut you down. No cop can come in and shut you down. Nobody. You have the authority given to you from the people of the country. You are a true elected official. You're true public policy. This stuff that the legislature and everybody puts out, public policy in Nevada, what does that mean
Private
when you have a
interest.
judge that rules and doesn't even rule by the statutes that are on the books that are public policy?
Yeah.
They don't even rule by them.
No, they rule by opining.
Opinions.
Opinions. What could be, what might be, how they see it.
Yeah.
Not natural law.
And that pesky little thing called the Constitution.
Yeah,
Pesky little document.
Yeah,
which is non-negotiable.
that's right.
Should be. But you got a lady right now running for president. We probably all know who she is now that Carly's dropped out. But anyways, she openly wants to get rid of the Second Amendment. How do you run for president of the United States and you want to do away with the constitutional
Because
amendment?
you're paid to do that as a straw man.
But my point, how do you run? How do you even have a chance of getting elected? Because 50% of the people in this country don't have a clue anymore. Their brains have been stolen by the progressives.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't even believe there's elections, there's selections. Yes. That the voice of the people has long since been
Yes.
cast aside. These are all corporate CEOs doing the bidding of the shadow elite that are
Exactly.
pulling the strings. And it's just the
It's
next,
been 250
the
years.
next
They're
So there you
electing
go.
their
It's a
select-
normal sequence.
Exactly.
There's nothing weird going on here.
No,
You start a new country today, brand new. I'll check with you 250 years, and there'll be people that's talking about the same stuff.
That's right.
And it could be on Mars, it could be,
Yeah.
anywhere. It'll be the same thing because you're dealing with people.
Yeah.
And I want to put a shout out too right now because we've been asked, Tom and I, on the Cowboy and the Lady, have been asked to help with a notice of intent to sue. And this notice of intent to sue was put out yesterday. It starts with Kate Brown, Grasty, Ward, Bretzig, and all others. There's going to be many, many to be named in their personal capacity for the damage and harm done to the people. And this is really important for recognition of the employer is no longer the ones, it's the people who are employed that are now going to be taken to task. Because we hear from so many of them, oh, we know it's wrong, but we have to feed our family. Well, guess what? What we just talked about, if they take all the land, all the resources, and we have nowhere to have our food made or grown,
they're not
what
gonna feed
matter
their family either.
does that job make? So you're going to be hearing, because across this nation, people are taking the men and women to task. And if you go and Google, North Carolina judge warns police to get everything out of their name.
Yeah, I know about that.
Because why?
They know
Because
it's
they
coming.
now know, and this was a couple of years ago, that the individual man, living man or woman, will be taken to task privately. He told them personally, get everything out of your name. Your cars, your real estate, your assets, your property. Get it out of your name. Now, doesn't that tell you something?
That had to
Well-
do with Rod Class and
Yes,
Thomas
yes,
Deegan
it
and
did.
their actions that found that the states are all private corporations.
Thomas Deegan, another political prisoner.
Absolutely, they're all private corporations with private employees masquerading as public servants,
Yep.
serving the corporate interest, not the people's interest, which is exactly how the sheriffs have been usurped from their powers by the employment contract of the county commissions or the city councils, putting them subject to the power of the Board of Commissioners or the city council, making them slaves and giving them administrative immunity, the pretense of it at least, by separating them from the men that they're supposed to control to provide a pretense of veil of immunity from the actions of their hireling servants who work as police and sheriff's deputies, and they think that they're protecting the people, but they're really protecting the corporation interest, not the people's interest. And this is why we're in such dire straits in this country,
And this is
because
why
of
we
usurping
have
of authority.
Mr. Bundy, Ammon, and Ryan, and the others incarcerated right now is because of exactly what you just said, and because the sheeple have woken up and know that they no longer have a government, they have a corporate structure. And if these guys at the BLM don't succeed in killing, maiming, and shutting down the voice of the people who know the truth, they have no structure. All we're asking, no, we're saying, we're telling, it's time to shut down the corruption, have transparency. The American patriot is the most pro-government. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers.
Amen.
We want pro-transparency. We want ridding our lives of corporate structure for profit. We want to be able to travel down the street in our automobiles, as we're
Unmolested.
unmolested, untrespassed. And we want to be able to know that we're going to raise our children and they're still going to have food that we can feed them.
And the problem is, after our 250 years, we have a very serious cancer. And cancer doesn't get better the next day, it gets worse. So we have to cut out all this stuff. Now, other places like the French Revolution, they had to cut off everybody's heads that were in power. And I mean, this is what it's going to come to. Why do you think they're trying to take away our guns? And then now they've already figured they're going to have a hard time getting rid of the guns. So what does an Obama or this organization do? They have the Social Security system buying up all the ammunition. Why is Social Security spending billions and billions of dollars buying up ammunition? Because they're not dummies, but they're on the other side. They're the destructors.
Yep.
And we're the people that hope we can get a country back. But it's going to take an all-out war, I'm afraid. Because I don't know what the answer is.
Well,
You got half the country that just won't do anything.
but therein lies the secret, though. It has to be back, and this sounds terribly cliche, but it has to get back to we, the people.
But we only have half the people.
I
It
know.
only took
If we're lucky,
3%
that's on
to
a good day.
It only
Yeah.
took 3%. There's a reason it's called the 3%ers.
That's right. It doesn't take half the people. It doesn't take all the people. It takes a very informed, powerful 3% that come
Well,
together.
look at, and that is true, and the reason it is true is because look who's running the country now. It's not the majority of the people. It's a small number.
That's true.
It's a small number of people that are doing everything.
You know,
The only
somebody
problem is
would
that it's
go
doing it
look-
wrong.
Go look at the YouTube video called The Tiny Dot. The best one is narrated by Larkin Rose. That is the situation we're in, where we're bowing down to the tiny dot.
Mm-hmm.
And the tiny dot is becoming aware that we're not interested in bowing down to them anymore.
We don't want a contract.
Nope. And it's
We
all
don't want
done
to
by
play in their
contract.
sandbox.
It's
We don't
all
want
done
to
by
play in their
contract.
sandbox. We don't want a contract with them.
That's
We
right.
would, and I had a sheriff investigator ask me after I got SWAT teamed what my address was, and I said I don't have one. My property has a description, but I no longer have an address because what the federal government has taught me is how to live and how I'm supposed to be living. And in spite of the thing that's interesting the most is that had they have not taken the degree of theft and grand larceny and piracy and everything else, the sheeple would have never woken up. It is the very entity who throws people in jail for saying Constitution that have actually made me learn about my rights and the Constitution and how to protect my family. So when he
There's
said,
going to
"What's
be
your
an end
address?"
to whatever. There's going to be an
he
end.
said to me, well,
Be it.
what would you give us if you had an emergency to come help you? And I said, well, first of all, you're assuming I would call. I won't. I want to live to see tomorrow. I choose not to contract. We have a choice. Mr. Bundy taught me that. So all of them wanting to shut him up and throw him away, it's too late. He's already said what needs to be said. Now what they're doing is they're showing even more and more the bad actions of the bad actors, state and federally, that are destroying our country. So by keeping him in jail, they're actually creating the opposite of what they're attempting to destroy.
Well, we the people, the country's for us, right? We are the people, so
That's
we
what
get
it's
to make the
alleged.
rules, right?
Yeah.
Now, any order that comes from some authority that's a void order, it doesn't have to be followed. It's a void order. We the people don't have to follow that order. So we the people determine that we go to the courthouse and we take Mr. Bundy, we bring him back to his ranch. That's where you live, that's where you stay as long as you want to live there. But no one's going to tell you you can't. And if anyone wants to usurp our authority, saying everything they've done is void, this is the way it is now, that's it, and let the FBI, let everybody else show up, and we'll see how many people show up. That's what's going to come to. Might as well get there now.
And that's what the judge kept him in jail for today,
Was to prevent
was
that.
because
Well, he's the organizer of this whole thing.
well, he stood up. He stood up for his rights. He knew everything that had happened against him, perpetuated by the previous actions, were void. Because anything done from the court upon fraud is void.
Yeah.
So that judge
Totally
sitting
without
there
force.
today saying, I am holding you because you've proven you won't listen to authority.
That's void.
Well, it's a void action. So Mr. Bundy is being held, and he is right, and he would not commit to an ankle bracelet because he knows that if you commit to an ankle bracelet, you're still committing to being held in jail and their authority. So there's a lot of things we can do, but I agree with you to this point. If we do not recognize that what went on at that court today, when we came out, there were officers standing around. And we said to them, how can you do this job? And they did that. And we said,
Just following
don't
along.
That's one of my,
don't forget, up there above, down here below, you guys are not long for the action. The federal government is trying to do away with the sheriffs, the police, everybody, for the UN to come in. And what that means is when the day you're fired and you go home, who do you think's going to be knocking at your door to take your gun, your life, your food,
well,
your
my
family?
big question's always been, because I can always see, I'm very clairvoyant. I can see where things are going. Like my description of how many years. Okay, we're at that point. So my question now becomes, will the military of this country, whose citizens, or whatever word you want to use, will they turn their guns on a fellow U.S. citizen when they're ordered by an Obama or this or that? Somebody in authority says, shoot all these people. Will they shoot the people? Because that's what we're going to come down to.
Yep.
If they don't shoot, then it's over. Then it's over. If they don't shoot, it's over. I don't think they'll shoot.
I don't think so.
I pray that-
don't
I
think so.
pray they won't, but-
I've been at many gun shows where, I've been handing out cards and I have military walk by and they do this.
Thumbs up.
And sometimes,
Yeah, I
they
don't-
sometimes they don't want to take the card because they don't want to be caught with it. Okay? But they say, we can't take the card, but we want to let
I
you
think there's
know
people that don't
we're-
know,
we're
but
with-
they're
we're
going to
with
see
you.
their other officers not shoot or whatever, and then they're all going to pretty soon jump right now. We're not- it's over.
But honestly, I've had probably.
And that's all it's going to work, because you got people in power. How do you get rid of them?
There's
It
probably
has to be
been-
over.
There's probably been about 10% of those, though, that have come by, and they take my card, they throw it on the ground, they go, "We follow all orders, period."
Lawful or otherwise.
They're in the minor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they
They'll
are
be
in
in
the,
the
but they
minor.
are in the minor.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
My theory on how do you impeach like a president, like I don't know if we can last another however many months he's got left, to tell you the truth. Executive this. So here's my solution. We're the people. When he flies somewhere every day, he has to use Air Force One because that's his toy, and he gets to disrupt wherever he goes, and he loves that. All the traffic stops, all the king has come, All right, we call up the pilot of that airplane. We say, we're the people, you turn around and come home
That's right.
without your passenger. So you just leave him in the Philippines, you leave him wherever he is, you just get in the plane and fly home.
Good as toast.
That's what I was going to say.
No, he won't get on anything else if it's not Air Force One. He's so spoiled, he probably doesn't matter. You're done. You're toast.
That's
The
a great
people have
idea.
spoken. You're done. And then who's going to say, "Wait a minute, you can't do that"? Who are you?
Yeah.
You're gone. Okay. You don't need to go to the Monday morning. Your key don't work. Who's next? Next, it's kind of like I think when we hung Saddam Hussein, Bush was looking for somebody to point to the rest of the world. Do you want to be next? Okay, he had to go somewheres. He got rid of Al Qaeda. Was living in caves in 3 weeks. How do we stop this? Right? Let's pick on somebody. So he
Mr.
picked.
Bundy.
He picked on who picked on his dad, and he went and gave a message to the world, and we hung him. Okay, there you go. Who's next? It was pretty quiet for the rest of Bush's administration.
Clark, I think it was really predestined for us to come and speak with you today because you're obviously a clear-thinking, enlightened, intellectual individual who actually has a grasp on the problem and some solutions. We hope that we've brought some of the same things, and I know that some of us have to get out of
Well,
here.
this is an issue to me. And the reason I'm interested in this is just a tiny little speck of something that's so big. This is just the first. I mean, this is going to be huge. Like the lawyer said, this is not going to be over. It's never going to be over until it's over.
You're right, it's a battle between
We've
good
got
and
to do
evil.
away with the Bar Association.
Well,
and
everything else.
And we're hearing how the Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Education, all of these different bureaus and departments, many are going to be shut down because they're not needed.
Yeah.
No, well, they're busy buying ammunition right now, probably.
The straw companies.
Well,
You
they
know.
know they're going to need it, and I think that's a good indication. I had some people tell me, they said, well, aren't you concerned about, this group and that group buying up all the ammo? I said, no. That tells me if they're buying that ammo, they're afraid we're going to do something.
Exactly.
They're afraid we're going
Well,
to do
that's
something.
why they start with the guns.
That's why I'm buying ammo.
They're not going to be able to do much with the ammo if the
No.
people rise up.
That's right.
I mean, that's my question. Will they shoot a citizen of this country? Will they shoot a fellow citizen?
I think some of them will, but I believe they will.
I think
also
they're
be
going to
shot.
be. I think they're going to be.
If they do shoot, if some of them shoot, they're going to be in the minority. If some of those shoot, they will be overwhelmed, and they're not going to make it.
That's right.
And then at the end of the day, they're going to see all those people hanging from a noose or whatever. They're going to say, that might not be the way to go. So we're going to stop shooting the people of this country. It doesn't look like it's a very good outcome when you start shooting people.
The gig is up. The
The
people
gig's
know
up. It has to go that way.
right.
Otherwise, where's this ever going to go?
Yeah, you're right.
We're marching towards a cliff, and sooner or later, we're going to run out of track. So that's the only way it can go. It's everyone else has failed.
Well, and it's but I think it's sort of like a friend of mine would say. He would say, I think it's time for the fat lady to sing.
It's way past time.
Chris. Okay, well, that was very enjoyable, and I tell you what, it's just starting.
Thank you, Clark.
Yep.
So-
Thank you for doing this.
I know some of
great.
you are from out of town or whatever, but if you're ever back, just give us a call.
We'll do
All
it.
are except for one.
Well, we'll come back anytime you want.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay.
do another
And then they'll
follow-up.
give you their cards and
Yeah.
info.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And then if anyone has a pen they want to put to use or something to write a story, try to keep it like 800 words in that neighborhood or less, and we'll publish it in the paper.
Great. We didn't even start to talk about the Child Protective Services. That's a whole nother.
No, there's so many things. I mean,
But
Yeah.
all
this-
of this is
this-
fixed when we
Yep.
take care of the rest.
Yeah.
And Child
Well,
Protect- actually, do you
we're
know
gonna
in-
have to do-
In Florida, they used to have 100 and I think it was 32 or 37 collection departments. They're down to I think 25 now. So I'm here in town, and she knows how to do it. And I know where Renee is, and I know Gordon very well.
Step, Shelley.
And I gotta get going. Okay, love you. Love you too, sweetie. Good to see you.
Good to see you. God bless.
You too.
Have a good
Take
one.
it easy. Bye, guys. Good to see you, dear. Lovely you too.
Well, I don't know who you're all backing for the election, but I think the only person that can straighten this country out, or start or try to, is a guy that's totally not controlled by anybody in the system. And that was when I first heard about it, I said, oh man, this is the only way to go, because you're not going to buy the guy. And that to me is the most important thing.
Well, the fact that everybody's trying to kill him.
And what does that show you? What does that show
you know
you?
that Wiley Drake's running for presidency.
I
the
know
independent
that.
ticket.
Yeah, well, I think Trump was unlike Ross Perot, but he had a chance, and I think somewhere along the road to that chance, he decided the last thing he wanted to do was be president, and I think he threw a monkey wrench.
Wasn't working.
No,
I tried to call you to tell you that the lawyer is Joe Hanson,
Yeah.
right?
but nobody. I called
We
you
said that,
number.
didn't
Yeah, I met with
Oh
Joel.
no, my phone was ringing off the hook, but I couldn't get to it. You got to call the radio station.
I did call
Well,
down.
we-
5222?
Because he had just met with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5222?
Huh?
You called 5222?
No, I called the 0711.
Well, that depends. I don't know if that's working or
I
not.
called the 5222.
Well, nothing rang, or would have rung. Trying to keep all the balls in the air. You know?
Yeah, I know that feeling well.
Oh yeah, no, that.
How do we hear
Matter
it?
of fact, we're still in the air. So
That sounds like doing a Wiley Drake show. I have people all the time in my studio. They say, "Are we still on the air?" I say, "Yeah, I didn't turn anything off."
It was a good show.
Well,
It was
thank you.
a good time was had by all. A good time was had by all.
great.
Thank you so much. Oh, is it
Thank you very much, Clark.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You've got my number.
My pleasure.
Tell Vic.
It's a way of life. Family members from the earliest age helping out on the farm.
But new rules under consideration in Washington could change all that and end up costing everyone in the process. News Channel 25's Mark Wiggins joins us live in the newsroom with what farmers are saying and what the government isn't. Mark?
Well, Bruce, despite our calls, the U.S. Department of Transportation wouldn't talk to us about what they're considering. But Central Texas farmers had plenty to say.
At age 10, I was on a tractor.
For as long as most can remember, it's been the first step, the initiation into working the family farm. But it could one day be a thing of the past. Discussions are underway in Washington to require operators of farm equipment to have a commercial driver's license. And many worry such a step would put the family farm in peril.
The vast majority of our farms are family farms. Operators of equipment are usually family members. And if that were to take place, that would eliminate some of the family participation in the farm operation.
On his farm just outside the town of McGregor, Rodney Smallreedy grew up helping his dad. His son has grown up the same way. And with farmers facing tougher times than ever, Smallreedy is glad for the help.
Right now I've got my young son, he's 11 years old, he can drive that tractor like a pro. And my dad, who will be 80 this year, well, my dad's not going to go get a CDL to drive a tractor. That's not going to happen. And 11-year-old son, well, I'm going to have to wait, 10 years before he will be old enough to qualify to get a CDL. And I've got to have their help.
Concerned with the amount of farm equipment making short hops between fields, the new requirements would subject farmers to the same rules governing truck drivers, requiring them to keep logs and limit their hours, and the prospect of replacing family help with expensive professional drivers, an idea that for many is just absurd.
To me, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I mean, are we going to have to drive that tractor down to the Department of Public Safety to take a driver's test in?
As public hearings on the issue are expected to continue, many are frustrated, while others simply shake their heads.
We have lost our understanding of rural life and agriculture. I'm not saying that anything's malicious at all, but they just don't understand.
My name is Don Falls. I'm not here to make a comment. We're here to do our job. Okay. May I see those documents? It's a matter of public record.
You might want them the way you're going to be getting the cheese out. It's through the door on the side. Because that's the way the UPS always took it out, so it's easy access.
Right, yeah.
The only thing I ask we weigh it as it comes out.
Weigh it, okay.
Yeah, suppose there's a set of scales sitting there. I'd like to have it weighed as it comes out. Like I said, there's easy access.
You get some still shots for that? Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, Brooks. Get some still shots.
That's the way you'll be coming out.
Right, yeah, okay.
To move it out.
The amount of cheese that you're planning to take today?
It's approximately 32,000 people.
Is that approximate, or is
Well,
my
we don't
understanding
know.
is that there was a stipulated amount in And you are with the Milk Board?
Yeah.
Okay. Your name, sir?
Jerry Jack, State Milk Board.
Jerry? Michael Evans, how are you?
I'm fine.
So, the real premise behind this, and I know that your office has received some calls from our congressmen and our senators over the course of the last 24, 48 hours. Is there a reason why the Milk Board will not allow them to test the actual cheese that's available?
I don't have anything to do with that.
And what are you doing here?
Falls. I'm just here to help these guys. I'm a farm inspector.
Okay.
I don't do anything with the plants.
So you're unwilling to make a statement for the press, for the record?
I'll let Don make the statement.
Well, he's already said he won't make any statements.
I'm saying.
You're the same. So no one has any comment?
I haven't comment.
Okay. So how much cheese are you planning to take out of here today?
I'm not even aware of that.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm just here to help.
Here, help load.
So who is
Who actually is with the milk board?
Don Falls
Are there only 3 of you? You 2 gentlemen and
Don and Roger.
Roger.
Okay, and who is Roger? Is he here?
Yeah, Roger's here. If you're helping unload the cheese, at what point do you stop? You know, who says, hey, that's enough?
Who's this gentleman in the car? Is he with you
Yeah.
folk?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Larry.
That's who?
Larry.
I thought you said there was just Don and Roger.
No, there's Don and Roger. It's 5 of them. And Larry.
5.
Oh, Larry.
Okay.
Okay.
He actually has some paperwork.
He doesn't work for the
Don
milk board
Paul.
either?
I read it. They have an order.
You gentlemen, do you work for the milk board?
Yep.
And you say you are a farmer?
Farm inspectors.
Did you say you farm?
Yeah, this farm inspector.
Or they just farm inspector?
So you're not farmers, you're farm
Oh, no,
inspectors.
Oh, no.
Farm inspector.
Do you consider labor to be of value?
Guys, I'm not going to get in this. I'm not going to get in.
I will say one thing, that your silence, the very fact that you are here is your statement. That is your statement.
You guys are entitled to your...
You bet you we are entitled.
That's right.
But not the entitlement that you probably approve of.
Who's this guy?
Are you with the milk board, sir?
Yes, sir. I work for Milk Board.
Your name, sir?
Larry Basson.
Michael Evans.
Glad to meet you. And you, the owner?
No, sir.
I'm the owner.
is right here.
Well,
Mr. Dixon.
The state is the owner since it's been through court. I used to be the owner of the cheese.
As of this morning, you're the owner.
Well, I'm not.
Well, the state took possession of it. That's why there's an embargo letter on the door.
I'm not the state, though.
You're representing the state.
I work for the state.
You represent the
Just-
state. And you represent the state the same way Stalin, Hitler, Lenin, Mussolini, all of them did. I would like to say something here. We are praying for these men. We're praying for all of us, for the repentance of our nation, to turn back to the one who created this world and this country and gave us one of the greatest countries on the face of the earth that we're now losing to what's happening, to what's going on. If there's any actual sicknesses or illnesses, I'd have no problem destroying the cheese myself. But there has been none. They haven't been able to prove any. This cheese was sold and given away to people with immune deficiencies, people who couldn't afford to buy it. We gave it to them. People who were going bankrupt, we gave it to them to try to help keep them alive as this country's being torn apart and rendered asunder. And there's a Bible verse that I would like to quote if you people wouldn't mind. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will heal their land. We're seeing the fulfillment of our wicked ways as a people. And that includes each and every one of us. These men are here to just do a job. They're hired and paid. They don't think beyond that necessarily. I have pity for them. I feel sorry for them. Because all of us will meet a just and accurate God at one point.
All right.
It just depends upon when. And this is to be a peaceful gathering. This is to be peaceful. Let them do their jobs. But I ask for the repentance of our nation to turn back to the Creator. For we are losing it. We're losing it for our children, our grandchildren, and the future. And that's what this fight has been about.
That's right.
It's about the tyranny of what's coming upon us. And it's each little piece of it. It's not just these men are just doing a job. That is what they said under Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Lenin, all of them. As countries were rendered asunder. Thank you.
This is an injustice.
Amen.
Sir.
Good job. Not dust it off.
Sir, you may be uncomfortable,
I'm not.
but the truth is that what you're doing is wrong.
I'm just doing
Doing my job.
my job.
They said that in Nuremberg, with all due respect.
What is the job worth, though, really, when it comes to our nation?
There are better jobs.
If you participate in the destruction, then you're as guilty as everyone
Absolutely.
I had to leave a few jobs myself because of conflict, spiritual conflicts.
And what's right and wrong?
These people haven't done anything wrong.
Well, the milk board, if the milk board was intending to be fair, what they would essentially allow them to do is test what's damaged or test what's tainted and destroy that and retain the remainder. And unfortunately, the Milk Board has seen fit to utilize the heavy hand of abuse that they have under administrative rules, which are not law, but are treated as such. And that's a crime. With all due respect, sir, that's a crime. And you're a perpetrator in that crime by participating and working here with these people today. That's the truth.
You have your right to...
That's not an opinion, that's a fact, sir. You're not
not much longer, apparently.
You are entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. That is a fact, what he just said.
You said we have a right. Well, these people had a right to make a living too, an honest living. Now they don't have that right anymore. It's been taken away from them.
Well,
there's been no due diligence.
You haven't had your ox gored yet, have you? These people just got their ox gored. You're liable to suffer what these people have someday.
That may be.
Maybe. Maybe sooner than you think. We all may be doing the same thing that these people are going through. It won't be fun. You may have the opportunity someday to suffer what these people are suffering. Because when these people don't have any qualms about doing to you what you're doing to them.
The simple fact is that this gathering of people here today ought to tell you what the real issue is going on here in our nation. These people are concerned enough and upset enough about what we see as the destruction of our nation that they are willing to come out here this morning. Some of us have been here since 6 o'clock to make sure that we record and establish what's really happening here. That we have an agency that is absolutely run amok and is completely out of control. And you are more than willing to destroy a family farm and a family business so that someone can punch a bureaucratic ticket. It's inexcusable that you would destroy all of this cheese when it's never even been tested. That is inexcusable. If you find one bad apple in the bushel, you don't throw out the entire bushel. You throw out the bad apple. And the fact that the Milk Board has refused to allow this cheese to be tested to determine what's tainted and what's not is inexcusable.
Well, didn't the feds do 100 tests that came up
back?
With
They
negative?
swabbed the facility and came up and did 100 tests under the FDA guidelines and found 100 out of the 99 swabs that were done, 100% came back negative for results.
Even stuck the swab down the drain.
Say, Joe, I'd ask for your assistance. We're going to have to get those vehicles moved away from them so we can get the trailer in
You have
there.
to ask all of them, or else you'll...
All right, we'll get back to this later. I have to end this segment. We'll be back here in about 10 minutes or so. I have a short pre-recorded interview with Michelle Fiore that Jason, who is one of our broadcasters over here at the radio station, did earlier. And then after that, we'll have Joe Rice and Tom Davis and This Old Marine and Jason Van Tattenhoe when he gets back in from training. He's up on the mountain right now. And we'll just kind of go from there. So stand by, don't get lost. We'll be back. It'll be about 5-10 minutes. I got to get this cleared from the pipe.